USR USSIATENSIONSESCALATE UV HATYOUNEEDTOKNOW nuclear warnings and strategic shifts. The relationship between the United States and Russia has reached a critical juncture, with tensions rising to levels not seen since the Cold War. Recent developments have sent shockwaves through the international community as both superpowers engage in a dangerous game of nuclear brinkmanship. The nuclear testing controversy. In a dramatic escalation, Russia recently claimed to have successfully tested two nuclear-powered weapons, the Burevestnik cruise missile and the Poseidon underwater drone. This announcement comes at a particularly sensitive time, as the New START nuclear arms control treaty, the last remaining agreement limiting strategic nuclear weapons between the two nations, is set to expire in February 2026. President Trump responded forcefully, instructing the State Department to restart U.S. nuclear testing. However, confusion quickly followed when the Department of Energy clarified that the U.S. would conduct non-critical explosions rather than actual nuclear detonations. Despite this clarification, Putin ordered officials to draft proposals for resuming Russian nuclear testing, citing uncertainty over U.S. intentions. The Ukraine factor, a three-year conflict. At the heart of U.S.-Russia tensions lies the ongoing war in Ukraine, which has now surpassed 1,000 days. The conflict has evolved into a brutal war of attrition, with devastating consequences for civilians and soldiers alike. Russia continues to launch systematic missile and drone strikes against Ukraine's power grid and civilian infrastructure, causing thousands of casualties, with around 3,200 civilians killed between 2024 and 2025 alone. The fighting remains fiercest around Pokrovsk, a crucial logistics hub that Russia has been attempting to capture for over a year. The war has taken a dangerous turn with Ukraine's use of American-supplied long-range weapons to strike targets inside Russian territory. This development prompted Russia to update its nuclear doctrine, expanding the circumstances under which Moscow would consider nuclear retaliation. Trump's diplomatic approach, promises and realities. President Trump campaigned on a promise to end the Ukraine war swiftly, but the reality has proven far more complex. When Trump met with President Volodymyr Zelensky in February 2025 at the Oval Office, their talks devolved into a heated exchange that later played out in public and was widely broadcast. Reports have emerged of a controversial 28-point peace plan allegedly developed through secret U.S.-Russia talks without Ukrainian involvement. The plan allegedly contains proposals for Ukraine to concede territory in its eastern Donbas region, sparking outrage from European allies and Ukrainian officials who were excluded from the negotiations. Historic summit in Alaska. In a stunning diplomatic development, Trump and Putin met in Anchorage, Alaska in August 2025, making Trump the first Western leader to receive Putin since the 2022 full-scale invasion of Ukraine. The hastily arranged summit came after Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, traveled to Moscow, where Putin proposed the meeting. The summit marked a dramatic shift in diplomatic dynamics, with Putin praising the negotiations as very friendly and commending Trump for showing restraint amid what he called European hysteria over being excluded from peace talks. Economic warfare, sanctions, and the ruble crisis. The economic dimension of U.S.-Russia tensions reached new heights when America's Treasury Department imposed new restrictions on more than 4 dozen Russian banks, including Gazprom Bank, the financial arm of the giant state gas firm. The sanctions had immediate impact. The ruble fell by 10% against the dollar to a low of 115 on November 27th, before the central bank used its reserves to buy rubles, marking Russia's currency at its weakest point since the initial 2022 invasion. The NATO question, a fundamental disagreement. One of the most contentious issues remains Ukraine's potential NATO membership. The Trump administration has made it clear that Ukraine is unlikely to join NATO in the near future, effectively ruling out the possibility. This represents a significant departure from the Biden administration's position and from NATO's February 2025 declaration that Ukraine's path to membership was irreversible. From Russia's perspective, NATO expansion eastward has always been viewed as an existential threat. The conflict, as experts note, has never truly been about territory alone. It's fundamentally about whether Ukraine has the sovereign right to make its own foreign policy decisions, or whether Russia can veto those choices. Military realities on the ground. Despite diplomatic efforts, the fighting continues with devastating intensity. Russia attacked 5 Ukrainian regions overnight, involving more than 450 drones and 30 missiles, targeting the country's energy and port infrastructure. Ukraine. Officials accuse Russia of weaponizing the cold by deliberately targeting civilian heating and power supplies for the 4th consecutive winter. The Russian military is paying a heavy price for its territorial gains. Analysis suggests Russia is suffering approximately 1,500 casualties per day, while making only incremental advances on the battlefield. Yet Putin appears willing to accept these losses, viewing them as a temporary cost for long-term strategic gains. The nuclear threat. How real is it? The nuclear dimension cannot be ignored. Russia withdrew from the moratorium on the deployment of medium and short-range missiles, with former President Dmitry Medvedev warning of further steps in response to what Moscow perceives as NATO's anti-Russian policy. The Russian Foreign Ministry accused Washington of deploying missile systems in Denmark, the Philippines, and Australia that pose direct threats to Russian security. These moves come as the remnants of Cold War arms control agreements continue to crumble, raising fears of a new arms race. Looking ahead, can diplomacy prevail? As U.S.-Russia relations stand at this crossroads, several critical questions remain unanswered. Will the New START treaty be extended or replaced before its February 2026 expiration? Can a sustainable peace agreement be reached in Ukraine that addresses both territorial integrity and security guarantees? Will Trump's transactional diplomatic approach succeed where traditional diplomacy has failed? Can Europe's security architecture be reimagined to address Russian concerns while protecting smaller nations' sovereignty? The stakes could not be higher. With 2 nuclear superpowers locked in confrontation, the decisions made in the coming months will shape global security for decades to come. The world watches anxiously as Washington and Moscow navigate this dangerous moment in history, hoping that cooler heads will prevail and that dialogue will triumph over the drums of war. What this means for global security. The deteriorating U.S.-Russia relationship has far-reaching implications beyond Ukraine's borders. It affects nuclear non-proliferation efforts, cybersecurity cooperation, space exploration agreements, and the broader international order established after World War II. As experts warn, without ironclad agreements preventing future Russian aggression and mechanisms for sustainable peace, any diplomatic breakthrough could prove temporary, merely a pause before the next crisis erupts. The coming months will test whether 2 vastly different visions for global order, one based on American-led alliances and another centered on Russian spheres of influence, can find common ground, or whether the world is destined for a new era of dangerous great power competition.